Hello and welcome everybody out there in Union Arena land. We have another video coming at you today. Today I am joined with Hyperactive Gremlin and Papito, and we're going to be talking about the GenCon Top 16, breaking down each of the deck lists that we have, only one of which we haven't been able to find thus far, but we're still looking for it. It's another Roy deck, so I'm pretty sure it's relatively close to all the other ones, but we're going to be discussing each of the decks, how we think their matchups would have gone, and why we believe that they earned their places in the top 16 as they did. Now, Gremlin and I were not at this event, sadly. Both of us were very busy this weekend, but Papito here, he was just barely outside of the top 16 and came in 20th. So, guys, say hello.
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 I'm
Hello. So, yeah,
I thought
you
you were
heard
gonna say something, Grandma.
me too. Yeah, yeah.
Oh no, I thought we were doing something else, but now let's get
No, I
into
was
the
saying
deck
hello.
list.
Yeah, yeah, let's get in there. Great start to the video, guys. All right, so first up, let's start on the opposite end of all of this. Let's go to 16 and work our way down, shall we? The first deck that honestly was a bit of a surprise to me. Holy cow, Toshi Kenpachi. So you guys are fully aware. You guys play with me in Rumble Rama enough. I'm a huge fan of this deck. There is nothing more fun to me than going raid Toshi, re-raid Toshi, raid Toshi again against my opponent, and just locking them out of the game. Right? I've done this plenty of times. It's great. But I personally have felt like this deck was falling completely out of the meta, which is why I kind of like hung it up a little bit. Barring I was also looking forward to playing FMA, but this style of gameplay is something that if your opponent doesn't specifically know what they're playing against is exceptional for you. This individual decided that they were going to be playing 5 double AP cards that serve a very good purpose, and I think I've deduced why they were playing it the way they are. This Kenpachi acts as another removal, right? There's a lot of decks that say on raid, destroy a 4K or some other line of text that can kill something. Him being 2 AP and coming in resting is kind of unfortunate for it. And this one is pseudo removal, but let's be honest, more than likely you just remove a blocker out of the way. I think that this deck performs so well because the pilot was able to look at this and go, okay, in the matchup, as soon as my opponent goes turn 1 or turn 2, I will know if I'm going to be the aggressor or if I'm going to be the defensive. And with 4 Ikakus being able to loot through the deck, it ended up probably working out very, very well for them. I mean, I personally haven't seen Toshi being played that often in my area, but that just goes to show that if you are still playing it, this deck is awesome. What do you guys think?
Um.
Uh,
So, uh, Go
oh
ahead.
yeah, you could go. You could go.
So in my experience, I did play against one Toshiro at Gen Con, and it was pretty good. But I, for me, going into that matchup, I knew like what I needed to pop, which was all all the 4K Kennys. That was like my biggest issue. Unfortunately, I went into it pretty good because he wasn't really drawing his Toshis to be able to freeze me. I think in our matchup, he only was able to freeze me once. So after that, I just had enough, gas to just keep popping whatever came out on the board. But had he would have seen the Toshis, I feel like it would have, gave me a struggle at least. But because he had three, well, my matchup at least, he had three Kenny raids that came out and only one Toshi raid. So I was able to answer that pretty quickly.
All right. And
But it was
Gremlin?
definitely
Oh,
pretty good.
so, good, good. And Gremlin?
From what I can see on this deck list, from what I think that the main strength this has against the current removal meta is that most of your defensive triggers won't do as much compared to your offensive triggers, like your specials. Since this deck buffs super high and gets around, uh, I guess the most common color trigger for the event was blue. This doesn't seem to
Mm.
have as many valuable targets for it, and especially on defense into something like Roy, you really only have two great targets to remove, whereas your other blockers can easily be refilled. So
Mm.
I think it had a favorable matchup just going in defensively.
Oh, that is a very good point. So you think that its placement was due more so based off of matchup than uh, meta viability.
Yeah. It's definitely what one would consider an off-meta pick, where it's not necessarily as bad as the other lower tier decks, but
Mm.
it does have some merit compared to, I guess, your average board spam.
You know what? Very fair. Yeah, I agree with that. I think this player came in knowing that they know their matchup very well. And against Sukuna, yeah, this deck is amazing against them. And against Squad Zero and Roy, I mean, I hate to say it, but this Kenpachi can't be removed by minus BP. So Roy has to discard three cards in order to answer him. That's really good. That's really good. So
Right.
that and the Raider are the same way. And I've personally noticed when I'm playing this deck that I want to raid on top of the zero cost with the raid Kenpachi if I'm against a minus BP deck. The minus BP decks, they're all over the place, obviously. And yes, they will be able to kill it, and I can't discard a card to keep a bigger Kenpachi in play, but also I'm forcing them to have to use their specials on it. And I think that is what's so important about being able to play this into a meta full of squad zeros, you purple bleaches, Roy now. Like, yeah, I think that's really good. So, descending
Yeah.
our way. Oh, yeah, you had another point?
Oh yeah, something else that I would like to add is that like the math on top of the blocking ratios, you're pretty much always going to go advantage positive even if you lose a body. And even looking at the deck list, they only are on a 2-2 split of each of the specials, which
Mm.
does make sense. Since most of the time you're gonna have pseudo specials in the meta, where if you draw your own special outside of life, that means you lose a defensive tool, and it means you have to commit some hand advantage and some AP to get rid of something. Into a deck like this, getting rid of more cards outside of the battle phase with Roy is actually really important. Since again, basically everything besides barring maybe a few names can just be replaced and then given more pressure next turn.
Very true. And I will also like to say, Hear Me Maru split with Nozarashi is an amazing tech as well. I kind of agree with them. Where like Hear Me Maru always sticky rest something 5k, but if you have a Toshi, it's sidelined. So this can become clutch in a lot of situations, having it and you don't have any Toshis in play, right? Because you do have games where you don't draw the character. Especially when your count is only at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and you sandbag the one drop if you can, because honestly, you really want to get to that late game where you go, all right, discard a card, pick up a Toshi, raid Toshi again. So yeah, I like that they made the decision to have a split of each of them, so they're good in various different situations. I like that a lot.
I also think that I think that's a one drop Yachiro.
The one drop
I think
Yachiro, yeah.
yeah, I think that one is super good as well. Even though it is only 1,500, but just being able to like give that extra bump to Kempachi is also pretty good too.
Oh yeah, impact wins games. You need it. So
Hmm.
being able to late game go, hey, you remember this Kenpachi you've been blocking for 3 turns? Stop. Here's impact, and you win. So moving down the list, we also had Red Code Geass. I think this is the one that surprised everybody the most. And honestly, guys, I'm just going to say it. I respect this player more than everybody else at the tournament. I'm sorry. They brought this deck in and they proved that they are better with it than most people are. That is such a Chad move. But Gremlin, please tell us a little bit about this deck as our resident aggro player.
So Ashford is your standard, I guess, rush deck. What it tries to do in this meta, I would say that it requires more sequencing to make sure you get positive damage trades, which
Mm,
means that however much damage you do, your opponent has to meet it next turn so that you can continue going plus. So, for
mm.
example, this deck can get down, I guess, 2 or 3 life turn 4, then the opponent has to commit as many cards to get that much life down so that you guys will be even going into the next turn cycle. And the reason why this deck's so good is because every single deck in the top meta right now, I feel, has to play reactively. And if you're
Um,
playing a deck that's an aggro deck, a lot of the times they're going to force them to be proactive because a lot of their mindsets are set to, I need to wait to remove something really important, then swap the tempo of the match to me. If you're playing an aggro deck, much like Red Ashford, a lot of the times you can get 2 or 3 life down before they really commit to something. Then once they do, they will start having to play proactively to push up blockers. And that's really good since this deck, obviously, a lot of the good matchups come from the ability to just refill all non important bodies, and for the opponent to really have no good targets to kill, especially because of the site, making sure that pretty much everything from your hand is a threat turn one.
yeah. There's only one character in the deck that the site doesn't turn active, and that's the raider who comes in active. So like,
Right.
and you can restand somebody else. Papito, do you have any thoughts on something like this? Because, ooh, wow.
I think it's pretty good. The site, I think that's the one that lets something become active, right?
Yeah, if it's 3K or
Yeah.
less, it becomes active. Yes.
And then it also gives something, and then the other one gives impact. The Nully, what's her name? Yeah.
Nunali, I think she is. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just
You
those
rest
two
her gives
alone.
that someone impact.
Yeah. So just those two alone. Early game that just clears out a lot of the life. So
Mm.
that's pretty good. I did not run into any of these, fortunately. So, but pretty good. I always when we used to play it, when we were doing rare battles, this one was
Mhm.
was always like a big issue just because early game that those two cards would always come out and then it would just be aggro. It would
Yeah.
be annoying.
Just go
So
unga
pretty
to the
good deck.
boonga.
I am surprised that this deck did place as well. I was surprised that this was the code Geass deck that did place because
Yeah.
I guess we were all expecting purple code. So for this
Uh,
to pop out was pretty, you know, interesting.
Yeah. Personally, I was not expecting Purple Code to put up. I've been feeling like Purple Code has been falling off the last like 3 IPs we've gotten. And I think FMA just kind of put the nail in the coffin where like it doesn't compete. Before Purple Code was competing because it could sometimes kill things, sometimes synergize to kill things, and have a lot of triggers. But now it feels like you need to have more going on for your deck. Which is why this deck, like I've been noticing there's a lot less impact in our meta overall, and people are just saving that for like the finishers, right? Like you're not really putting your impactor on the front line to just go, I attack
Right.
early because your opponent's not playing. They're playing their life triggers.
Right.
And this deck is one that gets to keep its impactor on the back line and then switch to resting to give it. So I feel like the Noonally was actually an incredible tech, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that's one of the best cards in the deck along with the site.
Yeah.
So,
That's really
mhm.
good. Huh.
Something I will say is that when I was talking about before about the two different types of playstyle being proactive and reactive,
Mm-hmm.
uh Purple Code Geass is purely a reactive deck. The deck doesn't have any proactive tools to really start things to force the opponent out, and I think that's why it kind of fell off in this event, especially
Mm.
because every single deck in the top 16 has some proactive tools.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, like Toto is one of the decks I feel like all of us were very aware of coming into this event. Papito, you were maining Toto for what, like a whole month?
Yeah, that
Um,
was one of my choices between that one and Squad Zero.
yeah, and
Going
like
on.
one of the best things about Toto is like in theory, you don't want your opponent to Toto you and then swap your things out. But if you don't and your opponent is playing Toto intelligently, they can just go, cool, double damage, smash. And then what do you do? Like it's just a lot of damage early. So yeah, I think that reactive proactive argument is very, very astute there. Moving along, let's look at the only Sukuna deck list that made it up here. Were they in the top 8? Yeah. Sorry, Xburst is having a little bit of a hiccup. I would love to be shouting out people by their names again, but you can see it in all my other videos. I've shouted everybody out already. But yeah, Gremlin, I'm sorry, you're our resident Sukuna player. Tell us what is going on here.
So
I
as
played
far as
Sukuna.
Sukuna lists go, as far as they go, this is kind of bread and butter.
Mhm.
And the ratios of this deck are pretty much the only thing that might seem a little bit unusual, but I do think that shifting towards this style of play is actually better going into the meta. Since
Mhm.
before, a lot of JJK's bad matchups were Squad Zero and Purple Geass, mainly because all of their proactive plays were shut down by maybe one or two cards at max by those other two decks.
True,
And
true.
so the inclusion of stuff like the one cost Nanami and the new Nanami, just to make it so that essentially the raid forces a damage in. Obviously, it's a 4K, most of your raids on play will be one damage trade or a blocker, which for most decks that's fine to get rid of, but in a meta that's so, I guess, removal based, freezing a body that they either have to choose to block with or just wait an entire turn to get more use out of is actually quite valuable, especially if it's a raid, which means that if you play the Nanami into something like a Roy, that hurts a lot, especially since now one of their best removal tools and pretty much a cornerstone of the deck is locked to either being a blocker or you're going to lose out on more advantage for the next 2 turns. That's going to be really, really huge. Something that I would do though, looking at this deck, is that I don't think that a lot of lists are going to be playing Maki going forward, since the 3K blocker early isn't as impactful, especially because this deck now has enough dig tools and enough backline just to really fill out, and they don't really need the mill 2 as much, since a lot of the milling will actually be done by the more important raids like the Forecast Sukuna and the Nanami, milling one every attack and then drawing two. And then the other weird ratio that I've seen from this list that I do actually agree with now is the one shrine. A lot of lists
Mhm.
beforehand were
Yep.
actually cutting Maki and playing two shrine and four of the zero cost Nanami. I think it's fine because for the raiders, the math you want on it is you want for every one raid you need two bases. So 2 to 7, perfectly fine bases. You can cut down on the Nanamis if you want. And playing Shrine, how I explained it before, was that it's really good as it's essentially guaranteed damage off of any of your important raids. So if you play it as a capstone to your turn, you turn one of your raids into, okay, sure, that forces a damage. I'll refill that body next turn or I'll get it back, into I need to block this, which is really good, especially in a meta that really tries to conserve all of its raids for like offense.
Yeah, Pepito, any thoughts?
So yeah, so I also used to play Sukuna heavy. I did
Uh,
not
before I met
play.
you.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. But I didn't play the Nanami version. I was pure Sukuna. With Volume 2, this one definitely did get better. Especially with the new color UG, that's pretty good. It being at 3,500. At Gen Con, there were a good amount of Blue Sukuna going on. One of my matchups was Blue Sukuna, but they were playing the seven dropper one. So
Ooh.
I, for me personally, I did update my deck to also what Gremlin said. I did drop down a shrine from 2 to 1. I still don't play Nanami, even though the new Nanami raid card is so good, especially against, as he said, also against a Roy matchup, just because it just stops him from attacking, and that's Roy's big thing, to kill something when he's attacking. So that one's a definitely good one. I don't Only, I guess, I would disagree with Gremlin is Maki going away. I think that's what he said. I think Maki's great. Draw, search top two, trash one, grab one. I think that's great, especially for it being a 2K. I wish it was like like a 2,500er, but it's not, it is okay, I guess.
I'm happy with
But
her being a 15.
in my opinion, since I don't run Nanami at all, in my deck I do replace the one drop Nanami with the one drop, what's her name? Akari, the 2500.
Akari, yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
2500.
She's also an
Um
active trigger, right?
no, she's a draw trigger. But
Yeah,
still good
that's
because she
Oh.
has
yeah.
still good because she
Nanami
has
is the active trigger.
Yeah.
hmm
Okay. I thought they were the same trigger. Okay. So you go heavier on the draw triggers and the early blocking potential.
correct, right? Because just being able to slam down a zero and then slam down that 2500. Most of the time, people don't have anything to answer to that just because they have 2Ks or less. So I think that's definitely good. It's just like in the squad zero, how all of my one costs those are 2500s. It's hard to answer early game at least.
Yeah. It stops a lot of early game aggression from coming up and really like pushing through your opponent.
Yep.
As somebody who does not play this deck, though, I would like to express my opinion. I love this Kento Nanami. But yeah, I get everybody else's thoughts on playing the 25. I think Gremlin, you were on the 25, right? The one
No,
drop
he was on the
25.
So
anonymity.
on the 25, here's what I think about it between the
Okay.
Nanami and the Sukuna version, in that Sukuna needs the extra consistency because it doesn't have two different lines of pressure. The draw trigger is much more important compared to a mill on defense,
hmm
especially because Sukuna just generally has more bodies they can chump, so they don't need the extra 1k. But Nanami doesn't necessarily, because you want to keep both a Sukuna and a Nanami on your front line. So having the 5k block is quite important late game,
Yeah.
especially since the reason why I would say cutting Maki is more okay in the hybrid is because a lot of the Nanami cards do mill. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily need as many cards in your hand anymore. I guess since you have enough draw power in the deck, but the active trigger does help more into Roy, and I guess this deck is more of a Roy matchup check, which does make sense going into this meta.
Oh yeah.
But
Five
Sukuna
drop
is more of a yeah.
Kento. Yeah, that's all of those are good against Roy.
Yeah. This is the Nanami version is definitely more of a Roy check compared to
Mm,
the Sukuna version, but the Sukuna version I would say definitely has its place. I just don't think it's as good into the current meta.
right. Now, one thing I do want to touch on is the fact that this person is playing Nanami and has a good number of these Nanamis as well in the deck, and they still went with Divergent Fist. Personally, in this meta, I still like the bottom of the deck card. The one that says put the raider on the bottom of their deck, the other one goes to the sideline. What are your guys' thoughts, especially you, Pepito, at the event? Did you see a lot of win sideline mattering at all, or was it like, nah, the consistency of Divergent Fist was just better?
I think that in this type of thing, it should have been. I mean, I kind of like a split. Just
Mm,
because in case there isn't a Nanami on the field, then the opponent can just choose to put like a card on top, which I I probably wouldn't want. So I would split it just to get something off the board going completely.
yeah, that is a good point. If you don't have it, it goes on top. And right now, I think Yuji has lost his stonks unless he comes out of life. He's still
hmm
good, like he's still fine, but there are so many powerful win raid and win played cards that like it's really hard to justify raiding a Yuji into our current meta against a lot of things unless you can like take out a chump blocker, right?
Right.
Uh, but yeah, very interesting. I think I agree with you guys that the one of Shrine, I view this just as special number 5, that you can't get out of life, but you can search it. So yay. Um, and yeah, ultimately, it looks like a blue JJK deck. Now, Pepito, we need to hear your thoughts since you had the pleasure of playing against Rigo.
So it's I mean, it's a good deck in my opinion. Um, I was kind of like 50-50 on it when he first played down the first card. I was like, okay, he played down. I'm pretty sure it was the Tornado Zero Drop. I was like, okay, this is gonna be an interesting matchup. This is gonna be Esper Sisters. Not too bad, but I was like, okay. But then he dropped down. The next card was the Genos, I think. So I was like, oh man, I know what this is now.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, so my first thoughts on this is that I have to play faster, which is fine because it's probably squad zero. I'll just push up and then hurry up before he gets out. Saitama, and then start in case he does have it out. I can just block with a chomp.
Yeah.
Um, so I remember him even mentioning after the game was said and done. I remember him mentioning that was like the best hands that he has seen with that deck because I either by turn 3 or turn 4 he had down his first 5 dropper, and then so that was there, and then a turn after that and going forward he played 2 more after each turn. So
Oh, jeez.
yeah, so at that point, I had 4K bodies, I had raids happening, but at that point it couldn't really do anything. My Senjimaro raid couldn't pop it. Ichigo couldn't take it off the field. So at unfortunately for me, I was just a sitting duck. So definitely lucky to have seen 3 for 5 droppers, and then he had 2 of the double energy ones, so he can bring those up, and I didn't really have an answer for it.
Yeah. I looking at something like this, I feel like this was a bit of a niche meta pick where if you're it feels weird to say, but an expert on Yellow Saitama, uh, you know how it plays into a removal heavy meta. Because that's what we're in right now. I mean, so many of our top decks are so good because they're able to remove things 8 times, if not 12 times for Squad
Mhm.
Zero, right? And this is a card that you can't remove no matter what your opponent does, you can't really remove it outside of like super niche cards like Toshi and Rukia in blue and stuff like that. You can't answer this very easily. And I feel like personally, I had written off Yellow Saitama as being a tier 1 deck. I feel like it wasn't doing enough. Not being able to block really hurt into the switch meta that we had at the time. And it just kind of like fell completely off of my radar. But with that being said, like the ability to go, you can't remove my things, screw even your triggers. That's
Right. Yeah.
kind of good in our current meta, right? Like that's
Yeah.
pretty
Because
good.
even I had a special trigger from life and doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, what did that do? Yeah, like it just
Yeah.
oh, yay.
So not a
Gremlin, what
good
do you
way to start off the tournament for me.
at least it was the person who placed, right?
Yeah. 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 Thankfully.
Yeah. Gremlin, what do you think on this deck list?
From what I can see, I always saw Yellow Saitama as kind of the boring meta pick, since it again it has the 10K, so it can't be removed. Seeing it do well in a Roy Riza meta does make sense. In
Mhm.
this particular list, I think it makes sense just because the Blizzard package does give you a lot of consistency that you do
Mhm.
need. Since in the pure version and I guess in the other hybrid list with different packages, I would say that they lose out on the I guess consistent access to the Saitamas. Since
Mhm.
in this meta, if you are playing this deck, it is draw the 5 cost or you lose.
Right.
And it is
Yeah.
not a question of if you will lose. You will lose if you do not see him. So having the blizzards for draws and having the 1 cost for the search honestly seems really, really important. Uh, Getting him out early, it does, it does make sense that this deck would be quite a hard matchup for stuff like Squad Zero and Roy,
Mhm.
especially since like if you have 2 Saitamas, Roy can't necessarily do anything
Mhm.
because none of their blocks are going to be good, and especially because if they don't choose to block it, you're just punching for 2 every turn, which is faster than them.
Right.
Yeah. It's faster than most decks other than the actual aggro decks, like Ashford Academy. I would have loved to have seen a match between these two, even though I know exactly how it goes, but like it just would have been so cathartic for me to like look at two decks that I would never have anticipated being in this, top performing decks at Gen Con playing against one another. But yeah, I think if you can dodge an aggro deck, you can dodge a loss with this type of deck, and that's just kind of how it is. I will congratulate Rigo, like very heavily congratulate them on figuring out that this Genos card is actually really freaking good in our current meta. 3/5 is the perfect stat line. Draw trigger, it's kind of what you want. I think in this deck in particular, they want as many draw triggers and active triggers as possible. But double block with 10 actives in your deck, yeah, this acts like the next biggest Saitama that you have, right? Um, Kudos to him for playing this guy because I haven't seen him in many lists at all. What are your guys' thoughts on the double blocker?
'Well,
3,500
as an
double
aggro
blocker.
player, I hate it. I hate going into it. I hate it when they see it. Seeing it off of life, that's great. That's another one that isn't in their hand. But yeah, it's a good card. I think it helps in their worst matchup,
Mm-hmm.
being the aggro. Into their better matchups like Squad Zero, I don't think it would help as much. But it's always a raid base, so that's fine.
Yeah. And Pepito?
Yeah, I agree. A double blocker at 3,500. It also has a draw trigger. I think is a draw trigger. Yeah, it's a draw
It
trigger.
is. Yes.
The 3,500 blocker that early game that definitely answers a lot, so
Mm-hmm.
especially if the opponent's trying to rush. So definitely a must-have card.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I think anybody looking to update their Saitama decks, the first thing you need to do is put 4 of him in there. I agree with that a lot. And again, congratulations to you, Rigo. But yeah, that was great. So moving down the list, we're going to jump and we hit the first purple squad 0 pile. This deck is awesome. Pepito, please lead us through it.
So this is one of the this is the deck that I chose to go into a Gen Con. So my mindset was I wanted to be able to remove quickly and deal damage to their life quickly. So looking at this list is pretty similar. We have a couple of different changes. We both run split of the color trigger, which I know a lot of people don't do. So I also have two too. I also noticed that this one only runs two of the one cost Senjumaru.
Ooh, yeah.
Again, me, I like to push up. So that being one drop 2,500 with the active trigger, I kept that to a full max.
Yeah.
Um, I also see that I know I'm kind of like the only ones that do this, but again, split specials is definitely something that I like to do, especially with this deck, just because if I have that Senjumaru special, I may not have a Squad Zero card in hand to toss to pop a 5K. But with the Getsuga Tensho, I most of the time I will have an Ichigo on field, so I can pop those 5Ks. So that's why I like to do the split. Um, he also has that the four cost one, the four cost Ichigo starter, which I think is pretty good just to, as you mentioned earlier, just to have that impact to close out the game.
Yeah.
Plus, it has the remove four, which also feeds into the Squad Zero Ichigo. So you can have if you need to, if you know you have your fourth unique in your sideline, and you have that Ichigo, which is an activate main, you can easily get that Ichigo live and then good to go. So I think this is a great deck as well.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So Gremlin, as the aggro player, how do you feel about this version of the pile in particular?
Well, I mean, as far as the lists go, I feel like that's pretty bread and butter. I would say that, like, as far as aggro goes, this is probably one of the worst matchups.
Mm,
And the reason why is that compared to other heavy removal decks, pretty much all of the raids here mean immediate game state change, which
yeah.
is important on defense because, as far as aggro is concerned, it wants every single turn to do at least 2 damage, or at least to like remove 2 bodies. And if they hit like a Senjumaru or one of the better Ichigos off life, you're just kind of cooked from there. You can't really build back up from that since the opponent has the rest of their turn to reinforce their board. So as far as aggro is concerned, definitely one of the worst matchups. But for how I see Purple Bleach in the meta, I think Purple Bleach kind of took the spot of Purple Code Geass in that it's more of an equalizer for the decks that are not as oppressive compared to Roy Rizza. So it's more of a gatekeep check for like tier 2.5 and below. Because Code Geass, like I said, is a purely reactionary deck with a lot of removal, has tools for essentially every card. But this is purple Geass, but it actually has proactive tools so that it does win matchups against other heavy removal decks.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you. And looking at this from a meta standpoint, 22 squad zeros, personally think is the smallest amount I've ever seen, and I'm very, very concerned with why only 22 of them. It doesn't really hurt you at all to really put in 2 more Senjumarus, but clearly this person knew
Mhm.
exactly what they were doing.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, he topped and I didn't. So, but yeah, I run 25 squad zeros in mine, and then I
yeah.
also only run two of the sites. I see he runs four.
Oh, see, that's the one thing I
Yeah,
think every Squad Zero needs to be doing in the future. Foresights. Squad Zero without the Royal Palace on turn 2 or turn 3 is a very fair deck. Like very fair. It runs out of resources, but if it hits Palace on turn 2 or 3, yeah, unless you're doing something really broken, they're probably going to win. It becomes ridiculously powerful at that point. Um, which is why I'm a huge fan of just play 4 of them. Like it doesn't really hurt you that much unless you have a draw where you have all 4 of them in your opener. Like it's really really insanely good. I do like your personal opinion on running split Getsugas and the Squad Zero one. I'm not going to pronounce that. I would fuck that up.
I
Uh
do think that that card, that one, that special is pretty great though. Just
oh
because
yeah.
if you do have the cards, to put in your removal, you can draw. So that's also a big thing again because if you like, let's say you drop three cards, you draw three cards. Those next three cards could be the cards that you need to either use Senjumaru's raid or do what you got to do.
This list tells me that they wanted to high roll. Because with 22 squad zeros, I would not run this as a 4 of. I would run it as a 1 or a 2 of. 25 squad zero, 3, maybe 4. Above 25, 4 every single time. But
Right.
yeah, they were saying, I will see Royal Palace on turn 2 or turn 3, or I will not have my specials in my hands. Like, because like it's as good as the value is off of this, you need to have a critical mass of them in your hand already. So, I mean, kudos to them for like playing this version. I would not be brazen enough to play this version. I feel like it's a bit of a more gambling tech, but gambles pay off for people, right? So, moving right along, we have another variant of this. This one is actually one card off from being the perfect version of Squad Zero that I play. Um, and we don't need to be as in depth on this one, Papito, but yeah, give us your thoughts on this variant of it.
Four Senjumaru, one cost. There we go. That's what we like to see.
Yep,
that's
yep,
what I like to see.
yeah.
Again, this one is also playing four sites, as you mentioned, pretty good. I think how many squad zeros they have? They all
26.
okay. So yeah, so four is pretty good. They also don't run the zero drop Ichigo,
They have
and
a
they had it in
single.
place. Oh, a single. Whoops. Let me
Yeah,
zoom out. Definitely looks like aggro. No, it's 12. Yep, 12 zeros. They have more of the big man Ichibe, and then they also have the impactor Ichigo, which the four drop just one of as well. Again,
mm.
impact closes out games, so definitely needed.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, pretty solid deck as well. I like this one too.
yeah.
And they
I
have a split, not an even split, but they have the 3-1 split as you mentioned.
hmm The only difference that I have, compared to the version that I have, is -1 or -2 10 heroes plus 2 Ichigos, for the zero cost. But yeah, this is like dead on exactly what I had as my list. Other than that, I really like having the early Ichigos to be able to like make sure your Getsuga is online.
Right. Yep.
Especially since the one drop Ichigo, the majority of the games you have, you're going to put him in the front line, so your opponent can't push up against you. Uh,
Right.
so yeah, Gremlin, any thoughts?
I mean, this looks like the standard deviation from the Squad Zero list.
Mhm.
Runs a lot less, like you said, of a high roll. Focuses on getting the important names out. Focuses on, I guess, maintaining the board rather than trying to go for big swings, which
Mm,
does make sense. I will say that like out of all of these lists, something that I do notice is that you're either full running the 4-1 Ichigo or you're not really running it at all. And I
yeah.
think that's just a difference in the engine, being that this list definitely plays more to the line of enabling this card than the other lists. But that might just be because like it is kind of a high investment endgame tool, but it is still pretty good. So I do like this list. I prefer to run the 4-1 Ichigos with the Nullify, but you could probably cut it and be fine. I just think it's a great pressure tool.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. This card is just such an insane pressure tool. Um, and sadly, this version of the deck doesn't get to make it a double damager as consistently. You can high roll the double damage super early though, and get a lot of damage against your opponent, which I really, really like as well. So moving right along. Oh boy, Div. Congratulations, Div. We love you. We're so happy that this deck made it all the way here. Pepito, we got to hear you talk on the big clappy boy. How did you feel about this deck in our meta at Gen Con?
This was one of the decks that I was highly, 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 highly considering when Volume Two dropped. As you both know, I played this deck so many times. I think it's so good. I think this is better than Sukuna, honestly. Just looking at it, it's very similar to mine, card wise. Only thing I do have different than mine is that the one dropper searcher I have four of because I think that's super, super, super good. But again, I'm not the one that plays with Toto, so this one worked out. But a pretty similar list. I Another thing that they also have different than mine is the 2 AP Miwa, which I get why it does help pop something. If you, for example, if you play the 3 drop, what's his name, Duja, Mekamaru, paired along with that 4 drop with the 4-8 4-2 Miwa, you can easily pop something that's 4K. So I think that's pretty good. Plus, having double attack is amazing. Um, what else? The site is pretty good. I also run two of those. The Goodwill event, being able to pull something. But yeah, Toto Clap City being able to swap their two energies, bring it up to the front is great, especially if they're playing against something that needs like five. So Roy, Ichigo, things like that. If they're also playing a Toto matchup as well, disrupting their energy before they can disrupt yours. Mekumaru raid, being able to pop a site, so that's definitely important if you're playing against Sukuna or if you're doing Squad Zero as well. Just being able to pop the site cards that make their decks run is pretty great as well. And then just being able to pop something 3,500 or less. So if you do happen to like, let's say Toto swap something like, for example, Sukuna. They have the new colored Yuji that's 3,500, or the 3K Yuji. You can swap that. Raid Mekamaru, and then bam, pop that one out so that there's no more raid target. So definitely great deck. I love this deck. I kind of wish I would have played it, but my thoughts into not playing it as opposed to Squad Zero
Yes.
was I didn't want to be able to struggle to find six energy just in case. I know that there's 12 cards in here that are double energy, so it's pretty easy once you can see at least three of those 12 cards. In my list, I do run Toji for that the snipe Toji just to have that end game just in case. So I think this is pretty great. I love this deck. I part of me wish I should have taken this deck, but I'm happy how Squad Zero performed for me.
Yeah. Gremlin?
Well, from what I can see here, the one thing one of the more important things I want to talk about on this list is the Miwa. And thinking about it, it does make sense for a meta check into Roy Riza because
Mm.
it has to block, which means if the Roy attacks and doesn't kill it, that means you pretty much guaranteed drop it to a 2K, given that your board is full, which means that basically everything can block it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then on offense, if you drop something with Muta, or if you swap something to give you more favorable attack, it's actually going to become a beast. Because that's actually a lot of pressure that a lot of decks can't take. And
True.
the Toto raid, I do think that in a meta that is, I guess, might as well say it like it is, that is kind of ruled by Roy Riza. I think that Toto is super, super good since a lot of the times in these matches against Roy Riza, they're going to have a 2-gen and they're going to have a backup raid base. If you swap it with the raid and then kill it, that means that they auto lose a body on defense. They guaranteed lose energy going into next turn, and they're going to be at an AP minus, breaking your board again, which is pretty good since this deck does a great job at just flooding once you get the setup going. Because a Goodwill just to add back your raids if they kill it. And something that is cool is that on defense into a deck that relies on a sight, you're just going to annihilate them with the
Oh yeah.
Mechamaru raid. Even if you get it off of life into something like Ashford and you just pop the sight, that's kind of game over, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that this deck is a huge meta check and a huge knowledge check as well. Boogie Woogie is, in my opinion, one of the best removal spells in the entire game. Like, I will die on this hill. So many people are like, I don't want my opponent to get free value. I don't care if you get free value. I get knowledge if you ever go, I can't. I get to draw a card and I bottom deck your win sideline thing. And even if I'm not bottom decking your win sideline thing, I'm bottom decking anything. It's fine. Like, it is such a good card. I
Ooh,
think
Yeah.
this
So Boogie Woogie is, in my
okay, there
opinion,
is something that is important about this into Roy Riza. If you bottom deck one of their raids and they put something from their hand, that is actually really, really good for you because a lot of these
right.
decks
Yep.
Yes.
require a lot
Yep.
of hand
Exactly. Yep.
investment,
Hmm. Correct.
which
So that
is,
was
yeah,
just
that's
what
insane.
I was about to say. The Boogie Woogie is definitely crazy. Because they could, like, for example, that opponent, they could be waiting the next turn to use, let's say, what's that, the 3-drop Frieza or the 3-drop Ichigo or the
Mm-hmm.
3-drop Ovetsu. That's like their double energy, but because you played a Boogie Woogie, they can't really play that in the back. I mean, they can choose not to. I'm pretty sure that they can choose
It's
not to
May.
play.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
May.
So, but if and then just to be able to pop something that is 5K or less, and on top of that, you get to draw if you have a total on the field, and then on top of that, it's only cost 3.
Yeah, it
So
is
that's crazy.
an insane special. Like, this card is so incredibly just awesome, and it has one of the best arts in the entire game as well. Just like the Toto coming face is just golden. But anyways, yeah, looking at all of this, I think this is the deck that if I didn't already know what my Gen Con deck would have been, surprise, I would have gone with King and Kimley. That has been my favorite deck. I've been testing for 2 months. It is incredibly explosive, so much fun, and it's a reactionary deck that can go on the offensive. But if I wasn't on that, this is hands down the deck I think I would have taken to Gen Con. You knowing more about your opponent's deck than they know about yours rewards you so much with this deck. so long as you don't go up against anything too aggressive. But even if you do, you can stifle off their aggro very early because Boogie Woogie is only 3. Like, it's only 3. And that's a lot less than 4.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this was a very good meta pick if you were comfortable piloting the deck into any of the top tier decks because it's a great matchup into uh Roy. It's a great matchup into Sukuna. It's a fair matchup into Gias, I believe. Yeah. And it's a fair matchup into Squad Zero. Like, it's the only thing that equalizes Squad Zero from their broken draw to an average draw. Um,
Yeah, this was one
it's
of the decks that I did not want to play against. Thankfully, I
mhm.
didn't just because I only run 7 double energies in my deck, so I was
Mhm.
like thinking, oh, 7 out of 50. I hope I don't get I hope I don't get totaled out. So kind of
All right.
thankful I didn't run into this one.
Absolutely. Now, we finally get to the first boogeyman of our entire format at Gen Con, the deck that so many people weren't prepared for. And now everybody is panicking, saying that it's the best deck in the format, which it might be, but it's an amazing deck. Roy Mustang. I am so happy that everybody's favorite pyrotechnic is at the top of the charts right now. And this variant of it, I'm not gonna lie, is the spiciest. Not my favorite, but the spiciest version I saw in the top 16 that we got to look at. So go ahead, Gremlin. Let's go over this one.
Well, for Roy Rizza, this is the new bane of all aggro.
Hmm.
It actually, I think, is a better removal deck than Squad Zero. Even though
Yep.
it has less hits off of life, I think that just the overwhelming pressure, if you have both raids up, is kind of unbeatable. If you don't pull a special and they have their things set up, as soon as they drop something like an Elric or the 5-2 Armstrong, you really, really, really need a miracle just to get out of that game.
Hmm.
And especially combined with now the consistency since Roy, obviously great card. All of the draw power in this deck combined with the removal makes it so that basically every time you set up a push, it always has like the answer, which is something that a lot of removal decks kind of struggled with in the past, especially like Code Geass. Geass as a deck doesn't actually have a lot of dig power, so all of your raids in hand are essentially finite, but these will remove something every single turn compared to the just on plays of most of the other decks.
Yes, I agree with you. I think Roy was another one of those skill checks where if your opponent didn't read the card, they didn't realize why it is a you must answer it now card, which does allow the deck to flourish on doing what else it can do, push up and kill you. Like, it's such a good deck. Um, I was surprised to see that there was this many Roys in the top tier. I thought I made it very abundantly clear in the video I made that this deck was going to be competitive with our tier 1 decks. But from what I heard from a lot of people going to Gen Con, they weren't actually practicing against this. They weren't really learning the deck. Pepito, did you have any experience against this deck at Gen Con or prior to Gen Con outside of like the couple of matches in Rumble Rama?
I did not have that much experience playing against it.
Mhm.
I didn't know. I did have knowledge of the deck, so I knew that that's like a great removal deck. I didn't think that it would be better than Squad Zero until like I actually sat down and played with it. My Gen Con experience, one of the two matches that I did lose was against a Roy one, which I believe I'm not sure if this is Siggy's deck, but that's who I lost to.
Yeah, Siggy.
Uh,
This is Siggy.
yep, yep,
Yeah, it's after Divs. It's Siggy's.
yep. So that's who I lost to. Going into it, I did learn that Roy and Riza, as Gremlin said, that this is the better removal deck. My reasoning behind that is because the Squad Zero deck, that one removes on play, so
Hmm.
that's just one time, one and done. Senjamaru removes on play, and then the 5 cost Ichigo removes on play. This one though, paired with once the two Roy and Riza are out, that's kind of like a removal every single turn. So that was my issue. I was popping, his raid targets, but once he had out the pair, it was kind of like hard to answer to to that, just because he was removing my big bodies. Riza, when played, remove 2K, and then Roy would follow up base 1K, remove 1 card for the 2K. In my version, I also run the 5-2 big guy 4500.
Oh yeah,
That one is,
Alex.
yeah, that one is pretty good as well. I just run 2 of, just like him. Damage 2 answers a lot, and then just being able to draw 2 cards, and it has an active trigger, is super good.
Ooh.
But yeah, this deck is pretty good as well. I will say that the 3-drop Riza, amazing card. That
Mhm.
being able to draw and not have to discard something is pretty good. Not pretty good. It's probably one of the best draws. I did wish it did have either a draw trigger or an act trigger or some type of trigger on it. I think that would be make it like OP.
Yeah, that would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
I also wish it had that, but no, like it's better that it doesn't.
In my version of Roy Riza, I do run the 1-drop 2500. I think that that 1-drop 2500, I forgot what the name is, but any 1-drop 2500, I think that is pretty good for the
You're
aggro
talking about
start.
the Kane Fury.
Is it
Yeah,
one
yeah,
drop?
the one drop guy. 20. Yeah, that's Kane Fury.
Oh, yeah, 1-drop
Wow.
2500, and then he has a draw trigger.
Yeah,
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 him.
that's it.
20,
Yeah.
yep, 2500. I'm I'm a sucker for those type of cards, just to play
Mm,
aggro in the beginning. But yeah, pretty great. All the Roy targets, they're all good. The 1-dropper, the 2-dropper, the 1-drop Riza is also pretty good as well. Just to be able
oh,
to look at the top two. Oh my goodness,
that card
and
is an
one
insane
drop.
card.
So
Anybody who's
running for
never
up
played
is good.
Yeah. Anyone who's ever played Magic before, and if you haven't, there's this mechanic called Scry. And in that game, scrying is pretty good. In this game, where you are limited in the number of actions you can take and limited in the number of cards you draw, Scry 2 on a body is insane. In a lot of matches where I play this, and I play this in all versions of Blue that I play in FMA, it is frequently almost as good as a draw 2, where I'm just not drawing the zeros that would have sat in my hand and done nothing anyways. It's an insane card. Um, I think the one thing people need to be aware of when it comes to this deck is, yes, Roy is a must kill priority, and if your opponent is playing Louis, he is also a must kill priority. Um, but the deck lines its draws up so incredibly well, especially when you go raid of Roy, raid of Rizza, look at the top 4, place that other Roy raid back on top of the deck because your
Mhm.
first Roy is going to die. Like, it's top 4, pick one card, and you're drawing that as your next draw. It's insane. It is so incredibly powerful, and it's one of the reasons the deck seems so ridiculous is because it secretly stacks the top of its deck and then draws enough cards just to win. Not to mention, FMA introduced this very interesting mechanic where 3-drops can come in and kill their opponents. Wow. I wonder what other 3-drop was coming in and killing their opponents and was really, really good. Ichigo. So, like, the deck has so much kill potential because Maze Hughes, like late game, you can push up with him and go, I discard a card and attack. I chump block the next turn, draw a card. Like, it's an absurdly good card. Not to mention its resilience into Toto. I am surprised at as well. Um, Only needing 5 energy for Roy, and if you choose to play Alex, is insane. Um, and Div, I'm sorry to do this to you, buddy. He told me the tech of how to beat Totos, guys. You put a double energy producer on the front line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah, that's what he told me. All right. So and
I
Maze
will
Hughes is the
also
perfect
add
one.
I will also add a card that the three of us did not speak of is that event card. I think all the Roy decks they do run that event card. So good. Draw
Uh,
trigger on play draw. I think it's draw two. I think yeah, draw
it,
two.
it
So
draw two,
draw-
and if none in hand, draw three.
yep. So that's absolutely crazy,
Yeah,
crazy good.
I think there
But
was
I think all of
one
them.
version that didn't have it. One version didn't have it.
Mm, well,
Yeah.
he's still placed, so it's all good.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, yeah. In my testing with it, I was not a fan of this card, but I understand why it is so good. Just in my experience, if I ever have to play this early or don't get to play something else early because this is in my hand, I am furious at this card's existence. But late game, if you top deck it, holy cow, is that amazing!
Right.
So I see the allure of it. Late game, it turns into a top deck where you can go, okay, well, AP draw something else, play this thing to the front line, play this
Mhm.
card, draw three, Roy ships in, kill your 4K,
Yep.
which is all right. So it's a special. Thanks. Gremlin, any last thoughts on this before we keep moving up the ladder?
I will say that the whole I guess card economy of the deck is really really interesting,
Mm-hmm.
especially since a lot of the bodies are very very valuable targets. Something cool about this deck is that you can choose one of two, I guess, extra finishers, being either the 4/1, I think Edward is it? Yeah, the
Yep.
4/1
Hmm.
Edward,
Yep.
or
This
the
one.
5/2 Armstrong. And they
Yep.
fulfill very different purposes. The Armstrong is something to drag away pressure from both of your raids, and it
Mm.
sits there as guaranteed block damage essentially, or it'll eat a special. And what the Edward Elric does is that it's a finisher that's just on top of your board after you've cleared most things, since can become an impact.
Yep.
Mm.
I think that as far as your rotations go, I think that the Edward might be better, especially since the Armstrong is two actions, and a lot of the time you're going to be AP drawing just to dig more, since you don't need more bodies beyond the Roy and the Riza, so that a lot of the actions are going to be for stacking and or just getting more resources to fuel up the Roy.
Yeah, I also think that the Edward is pretty good as well. Just let's say you have the perfect hand where you have Edward, two Roys, and then a Riza on the front line. If you sideline, if you remove two cards from hand, that gives Edward impact, and then if you only have two cards in hand, that gives Roy impact as well. So now you have three impacts.
Yeah.
So and then if you already use a Riza, that's already minus 1K. Roy has a base of 1K, so that's two. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. Kill that zero cost nullify impactor that you had. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It,
Exactly.
it's insane. I kind of agree that Edward is probably better for closing out the game. Um, I will, however, die on the horse that I love Alex in this deck. It might just be that I'm a huge Alex fan. I'll be honest with you. He's one of my favorite characters in the whole show, behind Roy. Um, but he is one of the most overloaded cards that we have in NA. Like 5-drop 4.5k would already be playable in most decks, right?
Yep.
The extra AP just gives him damage too, and I guess I'm drawing two cards. Like it's
Which could feed
really,
into
really good.
Edward. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, not Edward. It could feed into Roy.
yeah, I like him because he translates to me as play him early game and bait out a removal. That's what he
Right.
says. He because your opponent will never leave him on the field, and every time that you get to keep a Roy in play, every turn he becomes exponentially better and soul crushing for your opponent to try to beat. I've never lost a game where Roy stayed on the battlefield for longer than 3 turns. I've never lost it. So that's my argument for Louis. But clearly, you can go in either direction since they both, all of them had different versions of this deck and they all performed well. I can't wait for the next regionals for us to like pinpoint down what the list will be, right? I feel like it's going to narrow the field a lot for like the diversity of different cards played in this deck. That I am excited to see. Now, moving right along, we have the best performing. Oh, okay, I didn't. The best performing Squad Zero deck out of them all. So, Papito, you're back on the chatterbox on this.
Again, 4 sites. I think they all ran 4 sites. Yeah, four
Hmm.
sites, no specials. Um, but see, they have the four Senjumaru one drops. That's the
Yep,
way.
that's the key. That's the key.
Um, four of the zero cost Ichigo is pretty good as well, just for the raid target. Everyone has the one drop starter Ichigo raid, so maybe that was what I was lacking.
Yeah.
But yeah, just one of those, and then everything else is pretty standard. They split the color triggers, which I think everyone should split those, and then they have the perfect answer to to early rush, and then good closers.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I think this deck only really has a couple of poor matchups in our meta, and that's Roy Mustang and possibly Code Geass. I think Code Geass has a winning matchup in this match, right? Just because like Royal Palace, you do have to take a turn off to do, and Code Geass can punish you for that turn like really, really well.
I mean, it's more of a somewhat RNG matchup between Gias because I guess with this version of the deck, it has less removal tools, but at the
Mm,
same time, you're going to be doing more things on your turn than the average, I guess, Kogias player. So
mm,
realistically, it's just a matter of who has the better raids at the moment. Because if they clear your board and then you come back with like a Renji plus 5 cost Ichigo, you're probably going to just break their board again, and then it'll be back on them to rebuild. So it's kind of just a trade and advantage till one of you, I guess, stops getting what you need.
yeah. I think my logic behind why it was a not as great matchup is because you are so reliant on playing enters tapped 4Ks. Ichibe
Mm,
is an enter tapped. Ichigo 4-1, the squad 0-1 is enter tapped. Like being forced to just play those as vanillas allows the deck that has some of the best raiders in the game to really capitalize on that. But
right.
I see your logic behind that. It might just be an even matchup. I just the ones that I've seen, it's like either you survive long enough with Palace to win, or you just get ran over. Papito?
I said my piece. Great deck.
Okay. And then this one right here, more of the I think this is the cookie cutter version of the deck. This is stock Roy Mustang. You have all of the Roys, you have almost all of the Roys, you have all of the Rizzas, and then you
Hmm.
have Vatos and Color Trigger. Like
Yep.
this is the most stocked version that I've seen, and it's stock for a reason. It works. You have the
Yeah.
4-drop Mustang. What's your thoughts on this card actually?
4K body, possible raid target. Yeah, there's not much to say about it. It's a great card.
Yeah. Gremlin, what's your thoughts on him?
I actually think that he kind of fulfills a very similar, not exactly the same, but he actually fills a very similar niche to Armstrong, being that they're both really big stat lines that the opponent can't, like, I guess, ever favorably block,
Mm,
which is pretty nice. But
yeah.
at the same time, it is an active trigger and a raid target, so I do think it is slightly better.
Mm. Yeah, the raid target might be the winning for it. See, my original testing with this deck, I did not play him because I was like, it's a vanilla 4K. Why do I want to play that? Yes, it has text, but my brain told me that text is not as relevant. You know the difference between a 4K attacker into a lineup of 4Ks and a 5K attacker into a lineup of 4Ks? Nothing. They do the same job. Uh, but the fact that you can have that flexibility of late game to go, all right, I swing with him, draw a card because I was empty handed. I think that's one of those deciding factors that baits out removal on this card. And again, I think that's like the number one thing you want to do in this deck is get other things removed before you have a Roy.
Right.
Yeah, super reactive, but its reaction is really good. Moving along, this is the version that had the Ed in it, other than first place, which also had Ed. But yeah, this variant of it. Now, there's one other small difference that we're seeing amongst these decks. You either play Vato as your other zero drop, draw trigger, draw a card, discard a card. I'm in love with cards like these. I know people like Izarzin. He's not. He only likes it if it actually serves a purpose with your sideline. Um, and
So
this
I
one's
don't
playing the Black
run that.
Hayate.
So for me, I don't run that zero drop one drop. Well, no, not sorry, the zero draw pitch one in this deck. I opted for the Armstrong. The
Active trigger
zero.
2K.
Yep. Yep. That's what I opted for.
All right. So can you, just from your own perspective, playing the more control oriented decks that we have, the removal decks, what is the logic between each of these three different zero costs, and when should it be more appropriate to play them, do you think?
Um, th- I don't really know what. Let me read what Black Hayate does. He looked at the
Uh,
top three, reveal of the. That, this one's pretty good too. I just don't. Me personally, I just don't like how it's a 500. You know, I'm the type of person that likes to attack fast. So
mm,
that one, it's a good active. It's good to have as an active trigger, but I just wouldn't want to put it in just because of that reason why it's just because it's 500. But going by the text, it looks like a pretty good card. You get to search for a Riza or I think a Roy. I think it's Riza.
uh, no, it's a
Riza
Kane or
or
a
a
Riza.
Kane.
So
Oh,
in
Kane
your
or Riza.
version of
Well,
the deck, you have more hits.
yeah, so you're searching for a Riza, which is someone that you do need to see, especially if you're trying to find that three dropper one. So I see why it's in there in terms of the other zero drops. The draw pitch one, there's not really much to say about that one. It's a draw pitch. You're
Yeah.
filtering through your deck. You're trying to find what you need and then what you really don't need at the time. So that one's pretty standard as well. And
Mhm.
then for the last one, you have Armstrong, active trigger, 2K. Um, helps out with the early aggro. So
Yeah, I can see the argument for any of them. Uh, I think my play style suits the looter the most. I really like the tech of Black Hayate. It just scares me because again, I don't want to bottom deck any of my Roys. I just don't want to.
yeah.
Not if I can help it. But clearly, it worked out wondrously for numerous people in our
Mhm.
lineup. Now, let's get on to all right, the deck that second most excites me out of all of them. Sorry,
The
Red
OG,
Kogias takes it for me. Like
the
that was
OG.
so awesome. The OG big bad scary man of the format, Renji frickin' Rush, guys. Second place. Oh, people thought Renji was out, but apparently not. This deck is magnificent. This proves that having triggers in the deck is not more important than having power in the deck anymore. It is something that really showcases your knowledge of the matchup to be able to win a lot. So you play a lot of Squad Zero, Pepito. Have you ever played Renji Rush before?
Since the game started, honestly.
Really? Okay,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. So this is a pretty standard Renji Rush. It does have the new Renji in there as well, the one dropper, which I also think is pretty good.
Right?
Again, I
It's a
wish it
25.
had. Yep, exactly. Yep, there you go. I do wish it did have some sort of trigger, but again, I guess we can't have it all. Um, congrats to this person though. 40 triggers is pretty low for me, honestly, but it worked
Yeah.
out. But as you said, power is key. Even since the beginning, Renji has always been an issue. Just to have that the damage two not being able just having that damage two there without having to rate it is insane.
Mhm.
You just got to pay the 1 AP, which isn't too bad.
Yeah.
I know when JJK Volume 1 dropped, I thought that the Nobara Yellow would be the same way, but
Yeah. Same
No,
here.
yeah, no. But Renji Rush, it's Renji Rush. There's not much to say about it. It's been great since Volume One. It's great now. Well, it's been proven now that it's still great. With the added Volume Two stuff, Oetsu and Renji is all that was added on. Oh, and the new Ichigo, of
Yeah, the
course.
new because I
Yeah.
mean this deck more than any other one, you're gonna have the double damage online, right?
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Yep. Because you'll
Mm,
get to 10 easily.
mhm.
And then Renji also, when rated, he can pop something. I think that's 3K. So
Yeah.
that answers a lot too. And then again, you have the impact closers. You have the 3-drop Ichigo that bumps up to 4K when attacking.
Mhm.
Answers a lot. In the zero cost area, we have Renji, 2K active trigger. So again, like I was just talking about, for the Armstrong, it's pretty good. 0-drop, active trigger, answers early, and then you have the great 1-drop Ichigo, 20. So definitely great.
Yeah. Gremlin, what's your opinions on this?
Well, I actually haven't played against Renji Rush since a very, very long time ago. But come Volume 2, with the addition of the new 4-drop Ichigo, I think that the deck is still strong. I just did not pay it much mind compared to the full Squad Zero deck,
Mm,
just because I don't think that this deck had as many tools as I guess other decks do. In the current meta, I do think that this is a good pick, just because you
yeah.
still have the Miltu Ichigo and the Renjis, so you have enough removal for your bad matchups. But I do think into a meta of Roy Riza, while this is a little bit of a riskier deck, I actually think it is nice, since the Roy Riza deck, one of the strengths that it has is that it's able to remove bodies, and that they basically get no value out of it into this matchup.
Yeah, yeah. You remove one of my vanilla double damagers. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I agree with you. I think in the specific meta of Gen Con that this was a very sneaky pick, like super sneaky, um, and surprisingly exceptionally good. I've played every variant of Squad Zero the week that these cards came out. I've tried Byakuya, I've tried Renji, I tried Rukia. I even tried going for a Renji Ichigo build as well, and just dealing with the aggro decks, it felt like it was just too slow, right? SAO Switch, the Speedo Sonic deck, anything like that. I was like, it's just too slow. I can't really do it. But in our removal dominant meta, this may just be one of those decks that can just easily take it over because you don't have a proper target to sideline that's like the answer to it, right? Because if you play Squad Zero, you play Roy, you are rewarded for knowing your opponent's deck and going, this is the card I have to sideline when you look at it. But looking at this deck, what's the card that you have to sideline other than this Ichigo? The impact one. Papiru? Which one do you think is the remove you must remove card?
Either 1, 2, or 3. The Squad Zero Ichigo, that Impact Ichigo, or the Renji.
Yeah. But like that's way too many targets to have as a focus. I
Right.
think like yeah, that's really cool. And if you get yourself in a position where you're like, I'm attacking you with 3 double damagers, your opponent is doing very well. Like it's really really strong. And I can't wait to interview Jane about this deck. I'm doing that later tonight. But yeah, I think this was a sneaky pick that if you're familiar with it, your opponents aren't, that you can be magnificently rewarded. Not to mention, Renchi is just kind of sneaky good against aggro decks, right? You're pushing up with 3Ks, cool, raid Renchi, kill it. Like, it's just, okay. Now, first place and the big bad before we go over how we think this meta was actually determined and if we think that there's anything we need to be concerned about in it is one final Roy Mustang deck. This was first place. They played the 2 of Military is in Trouble, the 2 of Ed, and all of the Roys other than 2 of the starter decks, and 1 of the non-triggers. So, yeah, Papito, talk about this a little bit. What do you think, like, his thinking was in this variant? Because it's so much different than all the other ones.
So I think it's pretty standard as well. Again, this is all the cards that we just talked about. He had the 2 Edwards. He had 4 of the non-raid 4 droppers, so that's pretty good. 2 of the 2 of the event cards. Yep. And then he had zeros, ones, twos. He needed whatever he needed to start the game. Then 4 of the Riza, the double energy ones. So it's pretty standard, pretty good. Again, he has the 4 zero drop pitch. Again, that's not really my thing, but I get why. But I definitely get why. I think the issue, like I'm pretty sure that we are going to talk about, with all of the Roy decks, that a lot of people just weren't expecting it. Leading up myself, a lot of the talk that we've seen, a lot of the videos that we've seen, were focused on 3 decks, which were Squad Zero, Purple Code, and Blue JJK. So I think that's what we were all like pretty like focused on battling on this past Sunday. So just to see a bunch of Roys just shows that we were focused on the wrong thing.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you on that, where a lot of people weren't really putting as much respect on this as it should and as it deserves. The deck is an incredible powerhouse. It is something that, if you don't know your matchup into it, becomes exponentially harder to play against. And because of that, it was able to perform so incredibly well. Gremlin, thoughts?
This list looks like, honestly, the most respectable low ceiling list for this specific archetype.
Mm,
And low ceiling, not necessarily as in it's bad, but I think that they focus really, really well on the consistency, especially in the matchup consistency. Being able to see the tools that you want in each matchup, especially because, like I said, I prefer the Edward Elric tech.
hmm.
Having it late game just as a finisher for a confirm is really nice. If you look at the trigger count, it's actually really, really good. Having 12 draw triggers is
Mhm.
also incredibly important for a deck like this that loses so many cards on offense from the hand. I think having the draw event is important. I think having 4 extra raid targets that can be used as double pressure is actually also really important. A lot of the times with this deck, some of your worst matchups and your worst games will be that you don't see Roy, and if you don't see Riza. But having the Roy 4 drop, I actually think is really important just to keep up with the times that you don't see him nearly as early as you want to. And having Elric just as another impact tool is also pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this version being called the stock version, I mean, I think, well, you didn't say stock. It's more like the low ceiling version. I still think this is the stock version. And yeah, I agree with you. This is the low ceiling, where, like, if you gave this to a newer player playing the deck, they would learn everything about the deck over time just by piloting this. I think that's what you meant.
Yeah, I think that this is the most I guess, reliable list since a lot of the ratios make perfect sense. It doesn't run a whole lot of stuff that I guess aren't giggable for, and the inclusion of the draw pitch zero. I personally really like these. I think they provide a lot of consistency. I think they make the early game of a lot of decks a lot better. But in a deck like this that really wants to see 2 specific cards, I think it's great.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I want to go over, as a little talking point, is the consistency that I see out of everybody's decks. Out of the top 16, there's only 1 or 2 decks that broke the mold of what I call the 10-15 rule. You guys have heard about this a dozen times from me at this point. It is, you run a minimum of 10 zeros, and 15 0 and 1s in total. You want more of those if you want more consistency for your start, if you go to the low end of the zeros, but more or less that is what you are looking for to make sure your deck is very unlikely to brick. And looking at this, 11 and 4, exactly 15, 12 and 8, super high on that count. But because you have 12 different cards that filter the top of your deck or your hand, I think it works out beautifully for this deck. 11 and 5, really consistent on that end. 11 and 7, 12 and 5, 10 and 6, 12 and 3, the bare minimum, just barely hit it. 12 and 5, 12 and 4, 12 and 2. Yellow Saitama, the only one breaking that mold, and still getting up there. 11 and it's 4. Finger is not a energy producer, so when we're thinking about this, we don't look at it. And obviously 14 and 7. And then 11 and 5. So, would you guys say that might be a deciding factor for a lot of the top performing decks, being able to like have those low end ratios and then curve into what you need? Or do you think it was still just like more RNG dependent?
I think that it's
Always R&D
very,
dependent.
very
This is a
dependent.
luck game.
I will say that like the math on this stuff, for a deck that has as much draw power as this does, going a little bit lower is perfectly fine. But for a deck that doesn't have as much of good dig tools, I would say that you do need to decide like how the deck functions. If the deck functions better on curve than it does for like I guess your combo plays, then I would focus more on the low end. But if your deck focuses more on, I guess, the late game explosivity, I would be comfortable reducing the, I guess, the low end down to the bare minimum, just because a lot of the time you won't be able to get your deck started until later, anyways.
Right. Pepito, you were saying?
I was saying that this game is all luck.
Okay. So only run
So
10 and
yeah.
2. Screw it.
No, no, I have a minimum as well. I don't have a minimum of 10, but I have a minimum of 12 zeros at
Oh.
least.
And what's your minimum on ones, or do you not really consider that?
Ones I like to have anywhere from, well, mine's is still pretty high as well. A minimum of at least 4. Like for Toto, I only have just that one dropper for the
The
for
searcher.
the yeah, for the Sukuna deck I have 4 as well, which is 4 of the Akaris. And then for my squad 0 I have 6, but I also have 2 of the sites. So
Hmm.
I think it just depends on, for me at least, it just depends on like what the one dropper is. If it's a one drop 2500 with a draw trigger, I'm for sure adding that card in.
All right. Good to know. Good to know. Yeah, I think that the logic behind the 10-15 rule, I like it a lot. I've been keen on that ever since I started playing this game. I am somebody who likes statistics, so that's why I like it. If you run 11 zeros and 4 ones, you are 94% to have a playable hand. And with mulligans, that goes up to 96, 97%, I think it is. Uh, and then every additional card you get beyond that is kind of like almost redundant. But for these decks that have a lot of filtering, you can use Gremlin's logic, which I respect a lot. Of you can go a little lighter because you'll see your pieces with the filtering, or Mayan, which is I want to go a little heavier because I just need to see the pieces and then I can filter everything else out. Um, that's at least my logic for it. Now, seeing the top meta breakdown is 7 Roys. Do you think we have a Roy problem? Do we think
I
this
think
deck
it's
is
more
an
of a
actual
prep
problem?
thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's more, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely more of a prep thing. Like I said, I think a lot of people just weren't prepared for it. They weren't really playing against it. Again, I think it has a big thing on like the YouTubers and the Facebookers who was giving out their tier lists. and like I said, at the top it was Squad Zero, Blue JJK, and Purple Code. So I think a lot of people were just focused on that, so they weren't really expecting FMA to be at the top. On top of that, it's a new set, so again, people just probably weren't familiar with it. I do think it's kind of funny how now that this one has topped and it did have 7 spots in there. Now we're all trying to focus on this deck, this blue FMA that we're trying to, I guess, build our decks around that to combat that, because now we have in September we have Bandai Card Fest, and who knows what we're gonna see there, because now we'll have to deal with Blue Roy Riza, and then we also have um the new volume 2 of Code Geass coming out with blue, and then not that really much support for purple, but we have blue Code Geass coming out, and then we have AOT. So it just makes me think, like, is this going to be the same exact thing? How we're all prepping for one deck, and then out the blue in September we have a bunch of blue code, and we have a bunch of blue AOT. I don't know who's gonna be doing green AOT or red, but yeah.
Gremlin?
I will say that, like, along the prep problem, the reason why I don't think a deck as good as Code Geass did so well, and the reason why I think Roy swept the event, is because people are preparing for specific decks, not necessarily preparing for specific archetypes. Because a lot of the cards that people have shown their lists where they played at Gen Con, outside of the top, I guess, the top list, a lot of them play cards that would only make sense into, I guess, a few decks, and they were expecting to play against those decks. But the problem with that is that if you're vacuuming yourself into laning for only what you expect to play against, a lot of these matchups are just going to boil down to did you draw the tool against this deck? And if you didn't, you lose. So I think moving forward, a lot of the top players, and I guess a lot of the other players going to these events, will start prepping for archetypes instead, like playing, I guess, Armstrong for aggro, playing Elric for a lot of control, stuff like that, instead of prepping for only Geass, which I actually think is why Geass didn't do so well, because so many different decks outside of the top 16 were teching specifically for Geass.
Yes.
But the problem, again, with that is that things that beat Geass don't necessarily beat other removal based control decks like Roy.
Yes. Yeah, mostly agree with you on that. The two big scaries that we had before this event was Sukuna and Gias. Everybody knows Squad Zero was going to be like the biggest threat, but you can't tech against that without playing Toto, right? That's kind of just where you're stuck at. And I think I am a believer that Roy is a tier 1 deck. It is top 4 decks, top 5 decks in our meta. I think people neglected to identify, I feel like a broken record when I say this, that we are not Japan. We have a completely different meta than Japan. Japan's tier list is bullshit compared to ours. You can look at it to be like, all right, that's strong in Japan. It can be strong here. But just because something doesn't say it's magnificently powerful in Japan doesn't mean it's not going to be strong here. We have completely different decks, completely different themes, completely different tempos, pacings, everything. So I think that was the biggest issue with the majority of people is they just attached to, oh, Roy's not even tier 2 in Japan. There's no reason for us to care about it. And that is what ultimately led to their downfall because they should have cared about it. In our meta, Roy is insanely good. And I agree with you that this probably will not be the problem deck come the next IP drop. I feel like Roy fundamentally is a reactionary deck that can get a bit more aggressive, but it doesn't have a lot of tools to help it do so. And we are about to be running into some of the biggest, scariest decks that we have ever seen coming out in the newer IPs. Attack on Titan has so many different decks that are either rush aggro strategies or go big or go home strategies. And not to mention purple CG, or not purple CG, Code Geass in general. You were talking on the blue one. I'm terrified of Lancelot. That is a stupidly scary deck because it's just so consistent now, come Volume 2. I feel like the pacing of the game is going to shape and change based off of these new releases. And I would be surprised if come Dallas, we see more than 3 Roys in the top 16. I still think this is a deck that the more experience you have with it, the more power you can squeeze out of it. And over the next couple of months, we're really going to have people do that. So, guys, before we leave this off, looking at Dallas, what if you had to lay down money right now and bet? We're not betting, we don't gamble, but if you had to, what would you say is going to be the winner of Dallas? What deck?
I believe that Lancelot has a really high chance. I think that's before or after V2, right?
It is.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, the two decks that will make up a lot of the top 16 will be Squad Zero once they figure out, I guess, the better techs,
Hmm.
and then Lancelot.
Okay.
I don't know. Blue AOT looking kind of nice.
That's where you want to put your money on?
That's where I'll put my money on. I feel like it is going to be flooded with more Roy Riza now that they've seen how it works.
Yeah, I agree that it's going to be flooded with more Roy Riza, but I'm with Gremlin. I think it's going to be green CG. Lancelot to me just looks so scary now. It is another deck that doesn't get to play a lot of triggers, but what it does get to do is consistently go turn 3. Here's a double damager that just killed something. Deal with it. That's a 5K. Yeah, it's going to be scary. But yeah, that's going to be everything for the video. Geez, that was a long one. But we did want to go on a full meta breakdown. If you're looking for something shorter, I've already posted videos that are shorter on this, just going over everything as well. I just wanted to hear other people's insight other than my own so that I can have a better idea of what's going on here. Gremlin, thank you so much for joining. Papito, same to you. Thank you so much for joining as well. And we'll catch you all in the next video. Goodbye.